Colors, advance.
We give you thanks for enabling us to come together today to celebrate this great occasion. We ask your blessing for all those faculty members and others who've been instrumental in providing our graduates with a fine medical education. May you also bless those family members and friends who have offered us continuous support throughout the past 4 years. We ask that you shed your light and grace on our graduating class. Help us to always serve our country with the most honorable of intentions and to practice medicine to the best of our abilities. With your guidance, may we in turn become educators of future military physicians. We pray for all these things in the name of our Lord. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure for me to introduce the student officer who has been president of the class of 1982 for the past 3 years. As his last official act in his present grade, Lieutenant William P. Madigan, United States Army, will deliver the farewell and reflections of the class of 1982.
Mr. Packard, distinguished guests, I would like to welcome and thank all the faculty, family, and friends who have come a great distance, and those who have come not so far, to share this important occasion with us. In return, I promise to keep my remarks brief. Graduation is always a time of mixed emotions. Joy at having set a goal and met it, mixed with the sorrow at the impending separation from friends. Each class has a unique personality, which develops from the interactions of its individual members. I have felt very fortunate that chance threw me in with such a great group of classmates. When we arrived in 1978 for the pre-freshman orientation, we quickly became friends and began to sample the nightlife of San Antonio. Meanwhile, in Rhode Island, our Navy classmates were getting a jump on us in such skills as polishing floors and meeting curfew. After Labor Day, we resurrected our fears regarding the challenge of medical school and began classes. With the help of individuals such as Dr. Blank, Colonel Joy, and Dean Sanford, we got off on the right foot, a healthy balance of working hard and playing hard, with a lot of academic cooperation, except during exams, of course. After 4 months, we looked around, realized we had not yet been asked to leave, and figured we had it licked. Some of us, such as the Utah Six, took extended vacations. Others, like the Elevator 4, began to explore the new school buildings. And still others began to organize and attend parties, trips, and social activities. We made time for such activities to provide a proper balance to the early morning biochemistry lectures, exam weeks, and lab exercises. I myself, and I think members of the faculty and administration, were impressed with the cohesiveness we evidenced from the outset. Certainly cliques developed over the years, but a great deal of camaraderie and friendship persisted among all class members. As our clinical years approached, we again developed mild apprehension. We had been exposed to such a large array of medical information, we were not sure how we would do on a ward with actual patients. I mean, how was our knowledge of the Krebs cycle, the histopathology of a neurofibroma, or the mechanism of assembly and production of collagen going to help us when we were confronted with a real patient who was nauseous or in pain? Luckily, we learned an introduction to clinical medicine, which end of the stethoscope to place on the patient. In our sophomore year, we expanded both our skills and our empathy by placing numerous painful IVs in one another, courtesy of Dr. Rebecca and Dr. Lloyd. Throughout our years on the wards, we worked well together. We became acclimatized to the 85-hour work weeks and the 36-hour days without sleep. Well, no, we never really became acclimatized, but we did get used to it. As we learned our way around hospital medicine, some class members established legends, which will doubtless be retold many times over the years wherever classmates gather. I will refrain from recounting some of the more popular ones in deference to those classmates' feelings, unless that invite any stories later, which happen to include me. Some of these stories arise from our trip to Texas as seniors. I think we all enjoyed the experience of manning a hospital in the field, which tested both our skill and our leadership ability. It also sorely tried our ability to be Indians instead of chiefs. We have been fortunate not just in the classmates we have had, but also in the staff and faculty, both here at the school and in the teaching hospitals where we have worked. Everywhere we have found outstanding individuals who were deeply committed to our professional development. When we left the school grounds our third year to work alongside other medical students and junior physicians, I think we were all pleasantly impressed with the preparation we had received. Throughout our travels, which ranged over the United States and from Egypt to Brazil to Australia, we were well received and heard many positive comments regarding our level of skill and training. The hard work of our staff and faculty provided us an opportunity for an education second to none, and we took advantage of it. On the wards, we experienced for the first time the joy and satisfaction of helping others as surrogate physicians, but we also had to come to grips, each in our own way, with the impotence, frustration, and sadness we felt when we cared for patients with diseases which defy modern medicine. The profession of medicine places many demands, but we welcome the challenge. We have been lucky also in the wisdom of our superiors, such as Dr. Privatera, Colonel Joy, and Dean Sanford. In a situation where so many officers are gathered in a school setting, it is easy to reduce those officers to the roles of school children through overregulation, distrust, and misplaced priorities. This happens all too often when individuals become overzealous and concentrate on appearance to the exclusion of substance. I'm happy to say that during our 4 years at USU, this tendency did not apply. We were allowed to grow and develop under guidelines which treated us as mature, self-motivated individuals with a sense of integrity, duty, and professionalism, which was inherent both in our appointment as commissioned officers and our status as students of medicine. Hopefully, future classes at USU will continue to benefit from this wise policy. Finally, I would like to express thanks to our families and spouses who have supported us in our pursuit of a career in medicine. Today is our golden moment, but it is easy to remember back 5, 6, 7 or more years when acceptance to a medical school seemed formidable, perhaps even ultimately unobtainable. We all remember equally talented individuals who are not lucky enough to stand with us here today. It was our families, our husbands and wives, who buoyed us up when we were down and who hopefully will keep our feet on the ground if we ever get too taken with ourselves in the future. I would like to thank the spouses of the junior classes for their help today, and to the members of these classes, I would like to say that my class looks forward to serving with you in the coming years. I would also like to express my heartfelt thanks to my fellow classmates for their help and support. Together we have accomplished much. Well, it's obviously time to get along with our graduation. After getting counter-signatures from interns for Tylenol to treat headache, we're ready to sign our own orders. Besides the school's parking lot, it's getting too crowded. It's getting time for us to move on. I would have liked to thank the many individuals by name who have brought us to this point, but there are far too many, and I've spoken too long already. I'm confident that you all know to whom I speak, and on behalf of the class of 1982, thank you.
Lieutenant Madigan, thank you very much. It is my pleasure at this time to introduce the Honorable David Packard, Chairman of the Board of Regents, who will present the Board of Regents Award, the Association of Military Surgeons of the United States Award, the William P. Clements Award, and the Outstanding Civilian Educator Award. I'll start with the Board of Regents Award. The Board of Regents Award is the highest honor which a graduating senior can receive. Lieutenant Zaya, would you please come forward? The recipient has a truly outstanding academic performance and has shown the concern and care for patients, the investment in the social and intellectual aspects of medicine, devotion, empathy, dedication, and personal commitment required of a physician. He has proven his capability for hard work, both as an individual and as a team member. He has performed at the highest levels of duty and honor expected of a commissioned officer. The Board of Regents, with pride in his accomplishments and with confidence for an outstanding future, is pleased to make its award for 1982 to Second Lieutenant Paul R. Zaya, United States Air Force Medical Service Corps. This award includes both the Board of Regents Medal and a token $250 honorarium from the Association of Military Surgeons. Next is the presentation of the Association of Military Surgeons of the United States Award. The Association of Military Surgeons of the United States, otherwise known as AMSUS, has established an award to be given annually to a graduate of the Uniformed Services University School of Medicine. This award consists of a lifetime membership in the association, a plaque, and a token of $250. Lieutenant Madigan, would you please come forward? The Association of Military Surgeons of the United States Award is presented to the graduating senior who has best demonstrated the highest qualities of leadership and academic involvement. Lieutenant Madigan has demonstrated concern and commitment to the health of people, care of the sick and the injured. He possesses the social and interpersonal skills required to gain the respect, trust, and confidence of patients, superiors, peers, and subordinates. With pride in his accomplishments and with confidence for an outstanding future career, on behalf of AMSUS, the Board of Regents is pleased to present this award for 1982 to Second Lieutenant William Patrick Madigan, Medical Service Corps, United States Army Reserve. The William P. Clements Award is given annually at each of the service academies to that uniformed faculty member chosen by the students as their best teacher. The award, donated privately, bears the name of a public servant, now Governor of the state of Texas, who during his tenure as Deputy Secretary of Defense had a keen interest in the education of those who serve the nation. Major George Rebecca was chosen as this year's recipient of the Clements Award as the Uniformed Services faculty member whose personal example and performance best characterize the principles of excellence in education. Major Rebecca has consistently sought to inspire students to high levels of academic accomplishment in his role as Director of Introduction to Clinical Medicine and Assistant Chief of the Department of Medicine at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. Major Rebecca, would you please come forward? The Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences takes pleasure in endorsing the decision of its students by bestowing upon Major George Rebecca, Medical Corps, United States Army, the William P. Clements Award. The citation reads, "You are a physician who combines professional skill with integrity, compassion, and respect for the patient. You have, by your conduct in teaching, led your students to aspire to these same qualities. Your selection assures you of an honored place in the university's traditions of academic excellence and devotion to the nation's service." fourth award is the Outstanding Civilian Educator Award, which is given annually to that civilian faculty member, also chosen by the students as the individual who has most effectively conveyed academic excellence, intellectual stimulation, and dedication to students. Andrew M. Margolith, MD, Captain Medical Corps, United States Navy, retired, Professor of Pediatrics, was chosen as this year's recipient. Dr. Margolith, would you please come forward? Dr. Margolith is an acknowledged leader in pediatrics who has continued to challenge and inspire students to reach for excellence. His stimulating lectures are complemented by his compassion for patients and their families and his availability to students for counsel, direction, and friendly encouragement. Dr. Margolith's wide-ranging scholarly interests have broadly influenced this university, but it is warm, personal relationship to the students which has led to his selection. Their nomination concludes with the following words. Dr. Margolith, the students give you this award with great pleasure and respect. We are sure that future recipients will be honored to share the Civilian Faculty Award for Excellence in Education with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I have a special award to make, and I wanted to say a word or two about the early days of this university, because it was just 10 years ago that the Congress authorized the establishment of the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences. You know, I've often thought it was perhaps in a weak moment that I accepted the charge from Mel Laird to become the chairman of the Board of Regents, but at that time there had been a good deal of discussion over the previous years about the establishment of this university. It was named, the Uniformed Services name was included because it was envisioned to include not only the military services but other services, particularly the public health service. And it was not called a medical school at that time. It was called a University of Health Sciences. As we discussed in the early days among the members of the board how we were going to build this university, and a new university is not started very often, so we couldn't go to the library and get a set of instruction on how to do this. We kind of had to figure out what needed to be done among ourselves. We realized that there had been a good deal of discussion about the possibility of building this university to cover a very broad range of health sciences. We talked about having dentistry and veterinary medicine and nursing, and it was for that reason that we decided we would start out with an administrative structure which would indeed accommodate to the accomplishment of a university that would involve more than one school. And we designated Dr. Tony Carreri to be the president of the university. It was pretty clear after we got into the realities of life that there were going to be limitations on the funding, that the Congress was really not going to give us all the money we'd like to have to do everything, and we had to sort of get our priorities first. I might say to you young people in the graduating class, this happens quite often. You have ambitions about what you would like to do, and sometimes these are tempered by what you can do, and you always have to accommodate to that, and it usually turns out all right even so. But we finally realized, and in fact I would say shortly realized, that the heart of this university was going to be the medical school, and that these other schools would have to be put off into some time in the future. I think we also recognize that in order to build a good medical school, it would be essential for us to find an outstanding leader who could serve to design the curriculum of the university, to help with the design of the buildings and the facilities, to attract the faculty that would be needed, and to provide the leadership once these people were brought together. We recognize that to do this, we would hopefully have to find a truly outstanding educator, a leader, a man who would really be capable of doing this job. And we had a search committee. We looked around the country, and we found a young man, a doctor, named Jay Sanford, who seemed to us to be an ideal candidate, but some of his friends said, you couldn't get a fellow that caliber to come to a university that hasn't even been established yet. And he's been offered the deanship of several distinguished universities. What makes you think you could get him to come out here when you don't even have your buildings finished? Well, fortunately, Dean Jay Sanford did agree to come out, and he has turned out to be a truly fortunate find for this university. And I would say to all of you that the fact that this university has been built, is existing, and has achieved a recognition of excellence throughout the academic world and throughout the military world is due in a very, very large part to the great leadership that Dr. Jay Sanford has given to us since he came. He came here in 1974. That was just a little over, I guess, a little over a year and a half after we had started the program. So he's been involved in every aspect of the building of this university. And we're very, very proud of the job he has done. And I know that you all join me in giving him a very warm word of thanks for his tremendous contribution. And I would like to read a citation now for him. Now, this award is an award given by the Department of Defense, signed by Captain Weinberger, the Secretary of Defense, to J.P. Sanford for exceptionally distinguished service as Dean of the School of Medicine of the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences during the period May 1975 to May 1982. In this critical position of responsibility, Dr. Sanford exhibited unsurpassed executive leadership in developing and implementing all administrative and academic aspects of the School of Medicine. From the date of his original appointment as Dean, Dr. Sanford coordinated long-term planning and development and provided the essential day-to-day guidance that has brought the School of Medicine and its graduate program from a legislatively mandated goal to a working and a viable institution internationally recognized as a center for the study of military medicine. There is not an aspect of the school's successful academic and administrative program that has not been beneficially touched by Dr. Sanford's stewardship and contribution. Dr. Sanford's personal integrity, professionalism, managerial excellence, leadership, and dedication to duty exemplify the highest traditions of government service and have produced results which clearly warrant the highest recognition of the Department of Defense can bestow. For these and his many other contributions, I take great pleasure in presenting to Dr. J.P. Sanford the Department of Defense Distinguished Public Service Medal, Caspar B. Weinberger, Secretary of Defense. And on behalf of the Secretary of Defense, it's my honor to present this to Dr. Sanford at this time.
Thank you all very much, and please be seated. This came as a total surprise, and it's difficult to continue at this point. Members of the class of 1982, families, friends, members of the board, Mrs. Moore, ladies and gentlemen. For a number of reasons, it is an extraordinary pleasure for me to introduce our 1982 commencement speaker, the Honorable Francis D. Moore. Dr. Moore epitomizes academic medicine and as such provides a role model for each of us to emulate. He is a member of our Board of Regents, and I've had the personal privilege of knowing him for just 1 month less than 30 years. Dr. Moore was a Midwesterner, born in Evanston, Illinois, who then went east. He is a graduate of both Harvard College and Harvard Medical School. Following his surgical training, which included time in both clinical surgery and research at the Massachusetts General Hospital, he was appointed Surgeon-in-Chief at the Peterbent Brigham Hospital and Moseley Professor of Surgery at Harvard Medical School at the age of 35. His predecessors having been Harvey Cushing and Elliott Carr Cutler. As Surgeon-in-Chief, he shaped the lives of literally thousands of students and house staff. I recall clearly in early July 1952, when I was a new medical house officer at the Brigham, that Dr. Moore, as Surgeon-in-Chief, knew each of us our names and would address us as we'd walk down the main corridor known as the Pike. In his first publications in 1942 and 1943, he reported using newly developed radioisotopes and dilution techniques to define the metabolic changes which accompany trauma and surgical events. The impact of these observations, both by he and his colleagues, from 1942 to the present, are scientifically comparable to the Renaissance. His book, The Metabolic Response to Surgery, published in 1952, remains current. His hundreds of publications are broad-ranging in subject and even include an early foray into infectious diseases with a paper on tularemia. His breadth of interests are reflected in more recent articles published with his son on sewerage pollution from yachts. In 1976, Dr. Moore was appointed as Elliott Carr Cutler Professor at Harvard Medical School and is now emeritus in that position. Dr. Moore has most appropriately received many honors, among them 6 honorary degrees, including Göteborg, Sweden, the University of Edinburgh, and the University of Paris. He is a Fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of England, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Dublin, and Ottawa. He has served as President of the Society of University Surgeons, President of the American Surgical Society. He was Chairman of the Manpower Subcommittee, Study on Surgical Services for the United States. In 1976, he was appointed by President Ford as a member of our Board of Regents. We are further privileged in having his wife, Lori, here with us today. For fear that my introduction may be longer than his address, I present to you a member of the Board of Regents, commencement speaker for the 1982 commencement, the Honorable Francis D. Moore. Dr. Moore.
Mr. Packard, Dean Sanford, faculty, families, friends, and members of the class of 1982. This is a great day, but I don't think I was asked to come here to congratulate you. Maybe to commiserate with you about the trials of internship just ahead, or maybe to rejoice with you at the passing of one more milestone. Actually, my feeling of congratulations for you peaked out some years ago. It was in 1978, when you were invited to attend, I won't say crash the gate, of this remarkable house of learning out of approximately 3,500 other applicants. Or maybe my sense of congratulation really went to your parents around 1955, 56, or 57, when the large fraction of you were born. With the good fortune of this institution ahead of you, of which your parents, of course, were blissfully unaware, while, of course, like all loving parents, they were very hopeful of your success despite your miserable appearance at the time. The medical life has two periods of remarkable contrast, two great divides. The first is the first year of medical school, when you experience an entirely new intellectual challenge. Pathology, histology, histochemistry, and gross anatomy are brand new to every medical student. Some of you may have studied physiology. Some of you may have studied biochemistry in college. Some of you went to the service academies. Some of you may have worked in hospitals. But those great subjects, the basis of human biology and medicine, are entirely new to you. And the first year of a medical school is an experience that those who have not undergone it truly can scarcely appreciate. The second great divide is your internship. For about 24 years, you have been going through an educational process that involved two people, your teacher and you, your book and you, your computer and you. Now you suddenly find that there is a third person in that educational relationship, the patient. And you suddenly find that that person is more important than either your teacher or you, and that it is up to you to secure education and learning without ever putting the welfare of that third person in jeopardy. But then in a few years, 3 or 5 or 6 or 7, you take your place in practice with a skill that you may never attain again. I've often looked at surgical training as absolutely staggering. The intern comes on, he can hardly tie a knot. He doesn't know where the incision should be or even why it should be or when. And 5 years later, he can operate on me and has on many occasions. Then, through the application of this skill over the years, you will acquire the wisdom of a mature physician. That's a slow, never-ending process with no revolutions and no great divides. In addition to these two transitions, you have had a special one, I suppose in deference to the day. All right, I'll call it a commencement. On that day, about 3 years and 9 months ago, when you put on the uniform of a commissioned officer. In that uniform, often well named as your fatigues, I wonder where that word come from, you have weathered the rigors and figures and chiggers of Dean Sanford's toughening up process. In the field or in the brush or the desert, along with the conventional obstacle course of medical education. And in this role, you have had a double experience previously shared by only 96 other people, the classes of 1980 and 81. Not that there haven't been students and teachers of medicine in uniform before. In World War II, many of our students and teachers were in uniform, and back at the very beginning, right after George Washington took command under that Elms in Cambridge, and for the next few years, two of our greatest teachers, John Warren of Boston and Benjamin Rush of Philadelphia, wore the uniform of the Continental Army, a tradition of which all of us are proud. The word doctor means teacher, and as applied to medicine, it means that you teach your patient. You teach him or her how to live with his disease, how to understand it, how to understand what you want him to do. You are a teacher of your patient. And in the military, you will sometimes be the teacher of thousands of patients. That toughening up process of Dean Sanford's bespeaks the combat readiness that is an important part of your mission and that has new meanings in the last quarter of this century. I have just returned from the 7th Military Medical and Surgical Congress in Garmisch, Germany, where Dr. Sanford, Dr. Bullard, Professor Rich, and other of your faculty were in attendance. And I was struck again by the tremendously rapid increase in significance of biomedical science to the modern military mission. The health of troops has always been important. Napoleon, or was it Julius Caesar, said that an army moves on its stomach. That seems to be a reference to the quartermaster corps, or possibly the food supply. But the quip has been made that the army can't move on its stomach if it's immobilized by dysentery. That's a reference to something else taken in with the food. George Washington, in the winter of Valley Forge and the following winter, inoculated his troops against smallpox. And at that time, inoculation consisted in the intentional giving of the natural disease, hoping that a mild case would result, and conferring immunity, though there was no word for immunity in the 18th century. And he later said that the avoidance of this epidemic disease contributed to his victory at Yorktown. But now this has new meaning. Never in the history of human conflict have biomedical factors been so critical to military operations. Wars have been lost because of typhoid or typhus. Now we are in an era when the rapid, within hours, field identification of the pattern of injury, whether it be physical, chemical, toxic, bacteriological, psychological, or radiation, or the weather, may be essential to survival. The clinician working in the field side by side with a scientific team representing all aspects of biology will be essential to diagnosing new types of offensive weapons, new patterns of injury, and protection against them. Here we are on the day of your graduation that coincides with the first day of what we hope will only be a minor war in the South Atlantic. And as we look at the military problems of the clinical officer, we see a few notable things. First, that some of the oldest problems are still with us. How to deal with compound fractures. What about wound closure? Should they always be left open? How about the face and the hands, where it's better to close them? You can't believe that after about 2,000 years, those problems are still with us. But they'll always be with us because their solution is a matter of individual physician judgment faced with an individual patient. And when medical matters never are solved, it's usually because they're a matter of your judgment. Secondly, some of the oldest bugbears must still be born, but now with new bugs. The health of troops remains important, but it isn't the two typhs. It is hepatitis, mental illness, drugs and alcohol, new forms of venereal disease. The understanding of these new things will be immensely important. Mrs. Moore and I were in China just about a year ago, and we understand what a national epidemic of type B hepatitis means to a population of 1 billion people, I can tell you that infectious disease is here to stay, and that its problems and troops will always be with us and will be amongst those that you will seek to solve. Some of the newest and most forbidding and foreboding and ominous of military problems seem insoluble. The biological effects of ionizing radiation. When somebody talks about that, and we hear about the immune system falling down brick by brick or pillar by pillar, I feel I'm looking at the slow motion picture of the demolition of a building at Hiroshima. Combined injury, radiation and physical injury. It's interesting that here at this university, under Dr. Rich, and at the Armed Forces Radiobiological Institute under Dr. Walker and Dr. Conklin, some of the most important research in this field is going on right now. But a small burn with a very small amount of radiation is highly lethal. The chemical effects of biological products, a subject in which your dean is well informed, is a discouraging topic. And these things lead us to political aphorisms that are very important here today. That the best way to win a war is to prevent a war. And the best way to prevent a war is to be strong. And that strength which we cherish must be mixed with human understanding of the needs of all nations and all peoples. That strength rests on the military physician and the biological scientists, importantly because of this overriding significance of biomedical factors in modern warfare. In discharging this most recent obligation with its modern twists, this university will play a crucial role. Mr. Packard and the late Dr. Carreri and Dean Sanford are truly those to be congratulated on this, the third commencement. For me, as Dean Sanford said, it's only my 6th year, but for many others, including General Packard, General Heaton, Dean Sanford, it's close to their 10th year. I remember those meetings of the boards of regents over the corner drugstore in Bethesda. And when I was asked to join this board, I had a few doubts as to whether I should and whether I could help. And I can tell you, coming down to a great edifice that was going to be built and meeting with the board above the corner drugstore did a lot for my understanding of the defense budget. Mrs. Moore and I well recall that windy day in September of 1977, the small dedication ceremony that Dave Packard presided at out on the north slope there under the lawn where we opened these buildings. You as alumni will play a continuing role in this great university. As faculty, some of you are surely going to be on our faculty. As teachers, you start that on July 1st, because as intern, assistant resident, and resident, you're the most important teacher that the medical student has. As teachers and learners in continuing medical education, but above all, as the key people in the biomedical strength of our military forces, now more important than ever before in history. In closing, this is a medical commencement. Our job as physicians is the care of the patient, teaching them, caring for them, caring about them. Your patients initially will be officers and men, families and dependents, and I hope you bring that same attitude of caring and concern to your combat situation. At some crucial moment of decision, you will be in that situation, and you as teachers may be teaching thousands of young men how to keep themselves and our civilization alive. I want to thank you for asking me to come here and speak today. It is a great privilege of me as a member of this board, and now my speech is over. I can say congratulations to every single one of you. Thank you.
Dr. Moore, I know I speak for everyone here in the audience, the dais, the graduates, their families, the other students who are here, and the faculty, and thanking you for putting together, better than I think any of us have synthesized it, these remarks about the importance of biosciences in what otherwise may seem to be an entirely mechanical defense posture.